Hey guys, it's Coach Matt with Lifelong Recovery. So this is part two of the video of how to stay clean and sober. How do I come up with a game plan? So just to recap, we talked about don't underestimate the power of the disease. Make a plan, set a date, identify what I call your green, yellow, and red people, and make a decision, make that commitment to do what's best for you. So, moving on, the next thing I have is establish your new coping skills. So, the thing is, a lot of times drinking or using becomes our one reliable coping skill, especially if we've been drinking or using for a long time. So, I told you guys I started drinking and using when I was about 15 and didn't quit until I was 27, and I'm 43 now. So when I got sober at 27, I really couldn't deal with anything. I didn't know how to deal with anything because drinking and using had been my one coping skill from adolescence until well into my adulthood. So what we're going to have to do is establish new coping skills. And basically what that means is just like things to relieve stress, things that you enjoy doing, things to just let off some steam, things like that. So, one of the things that I would tell people in treatment, because a lot of times what people would do is they would just try and remove the substance from their life and then just keep everything the same, is I would tell people you don't beat addiction by subtraction. And that may sound a little bit corny, but it helps people remember, right? And the thing is, like, you don't just typically people don't just remove the substance from their lives and then go about their merry day and everything's cool, right? A lot of times when people try and do that, they just are like basically negating the substance, removing the substance from their life. They just end up going back to it because they're not replacing it with anything. So the idea here is really that you want to replace it with healthy things. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be the picture of health by any means, but just things that are healthier, things that aren't going to harm you, that aren't self-destructive, things like that. So one of the things I tell people is, what are things that you used to doing before you started using or drinking? What are things that you enjoy doing? Now, sometimes people have been using and drinking so long that they really didn't have a time period where they had things that they enjoyed, unfortunately, right? I said I was 15, so I didn't have a ton of stuff. I hadn't developed a ton of hobbies before that. Now, I did have some things that I could draw back on, but sometimes it's going to be developing new things, right? Just to give examples here, could be art, it could be sports, it could be going out into nature, it could be anything. It could be so many different things. But just if you already had things that you were doing before you started drinking or using that you enjoyed, just start doing them again. The next thing I ask people is, what are things that you always wanted to do? So, are there things that you haven't done, that you haven't tried, that you want to try? Again, it could be sports, it could be, I don't know, rock climbing, skydiving, taking a cooking class, pottery class. It could be anything, but and write these down. Come up, brainstorm these ideas. Another thing that is helpful to think about is, how can I slow my brain down? So a lot of times in addiction, your brain is going haywire, right? And so learning to slow my brain down can be a really tricky process. But this is really important because you don't want your brain going a million miles an hour. You don't want to go from 0 to 100 really quickly. You want to reestablish or establish, maybe for the first time, this level of rational, more calm thinking, right? Because the more irrational we are, the more impulsive we are, more we're jumping to conclusions, that kind of thing, the more likely it is that we're going to drink or use. So things that are helpful for this is prayer. And I encourage you guys, even if you're someone that has never done this, it doesn't hurt to try it. And if it doesn't work for you, that's fine. You do something else. But along the lines of prayer, which is very similar to prayer in terms of how it affects your brain, just be meditation. And again, some people scoff at this. Like they have this preconceived notion of either prayer or meditation, but especially meditation. And there's clinical research to back up meditation, that it does help the brain, that it calms the brain down, it slows brain waves. So I encourage you guys, give it a try. And again, meditation can take many forms. It doesn't have to be the thing with your legs crossed, that whole thing. If you need ideas, just Google it, or you can go on YouTube. There's tons of different guided meditations if you don't know how to meditate. But part of this process is being open to new things, trying things that maybe you didn't try before. So I highly encourage you to give it a try if you haven't done it. Again, another form of meditation is just being in nature. So nature is a great way to slow your brain down, just appreciating your surroundings, being in the moment, mindfulness, right? Not worrying about the future or the past, right? But being in the moment. And then just maybe board games, or could be video games, could be crossword puzzles, things like that. Guys, and another thing, some of these may sound boring. You got to remember, if you're used to these chemical spikes of euphoria, these quote unquote normal, healthier things could sound boring, and they may take a little bit to adapt to, but please give them a try. The next thing I would say is be prepared. So what I mean by that is, what do I say if someone offers me a drink, asks me if I want a hit, that kind of thing? What am I going to say? And literally write it out. What are you going to say? Sometimes we think that I'm going to be okay because I'll be able to handle it, I'll be strong. But in the moment when someone offers you something, you freeze, right? So seriously, write it down. What are you going to say? Have something planned out that you're going to recite almost if someone asks you. And then what do I do if I know I'm going into a dangerous situation? So early on in my recovery, I remember people telling me, have an exit plan. Drive yourself, or if you're going somewhere that could be a precarious situation, have someone with you that'll take you out of there. And you call someone if you need to talk, if you're struggling, right? And then the last thing is, don't be afraid of confronting and dealing with the past. Be prepared to face the past head on. Practice acceptance that you can't change anything that has occurred up until this very seconds, but you're working on today and building a better future, if that makes sense. And then there's this concept of push-pull. So what I mean by that is, it's much easier to be pulled towards the things you want than trying to push yourself away from the things that you don't want. So goals, why am I doing this? What can I work toward? That kind of thing. And then finally, just let people feel their emotions or anger if they have it with you. It's their right to do it. Just focus on yourself. Keep working on yourself. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I'll see you in the next video.